Fallout 76 was one of the most ambitious video games in Bethesda's 23-year history. It was supposed to be the perfect Fallout game. However, from a lackluster launch to a failed battle royale, nothing seems to be working for this video game. So, where did it all go wrong? Well, Fallout 76's story begins back on May 30th, 2018 when the game was first announced. Then, during E3, more details were provided about the game being an entirely online experience. Now, this was an entirely new endeavor for Bethesda. Fallout 76 was supposed to be 4 times bigger than Fallout 4, and it was going to be an entirely online game. The game being online did come with some downsides. There were going to be no NPCs in the game, and all interaction was going to be player to player. But Todd Howard did a great job of assuring fans that the game was still going to be amazing and carry the Fallout franchise forward in the right direction. Trailers were released, teasers were shown, and people were excited for Bethesda's next big project. The first opportunity fans got to play Fallout 76 was in Bethesda's beta test. Beta standing for Break It Early Test Application. After the beta, November 14th finally rolled around and the full game was released. The initial reception to Fallout 76 was historically bad. Many felt the game was visually unpleasing, that the open world felt empty and dull without the NPCs, and that the story was uninteresting. As someone who played this game at launch, I can't disagree. My biggest criticism of the game was that the story was entirely about people who were dead or gone. Bethesda's original story was that a mutagenic virus known as the Scorched Plague was taking over this region of West Virginia. Anything infected by the virus would become part of a hive mind and attack anything that wasn't infected. This premise has a lot of potential, but its execution was bland. In order to learn more about the virus and how to stop it, you have to listen to non-stop holotapes from people who are dead or who fled the region. These aren't NPCs that we can see and physically interact with, but instead voice actors trying their hardest to make me care. Now, I can already hear some of you asking yourself, why would they remove the NPCs? It's a cornerstone of the Fallout games. And if you did ask that, you're not alone. The true origin of this idea is shrouded in mystery. Some have speculated that server performance was a large factor, and others said that it was pure laziness. But I'm going to take Todd Howard for his word. I believe that this was just the game developers trying to be really optimistic and having an idea that didn't line up with reality. Bethesda may have bought into the idea that the player's social interactions in the game could provide the human element that the NPCs had provided in prior titles. If that's true though, they didn't really provide their player base with the right tools for it. Because during my playthroughs of Fallout 76, the only genuine interactions that I had with other players was either them buying stuff from my vending machine or completing a public event with them. In both of these cases, the interactions are somewhat forced. Buying items from more experienced players helps you unlock better weapons and blueprints, and completing events is a reason why you play Fallout 76. Sometimes completing an event with other random players feels like a bonus rather than a core part of the game's experience. But amidst all the negatives, there are some positives that I want to highlight. The first being the special perk system. I enjoyed the quirky card system and the ways that I could level up these cards to improve my overall experience. The second pro was that the game was online. I know that's a large reason as to why the game sucked at launch, but it's more of a personal highlight. I played a large portion of this game with my uncle, shout out Jugubus, and if this game wasn't online, he would have never gotten to experience the Fallout world. And I feel like this rings true for some other people. The game being online and allowing you to experience it with friends makes Fallout more friendly to newcomers. Now that one hardcore Fallout fan can convince his friends to hop on since it's multiplayer. You can promise them some help and guidance in navigating this unfamiliar world and franchise. But sadly, both of these positives weren't enough to save this game from the overwhelming amount of negatives. In June of 2019, Fallout would announce Nuclear Winter, which was a Fallout-themed battle royale. Fast forward to 2024, that mode no longer exists. It was a complete failure. Rewinding back to late 2019, Bethesda decided to pour more gasoline on the fire because they weren't done pissing off their fans. On October 23rd, Bethesda announced Fallout First, a premium subscription service that gave fans access to a scrap box, a survival tent, some more in-game currency, and access to private worlds. Now, that last benefit of private worlds really got people angry because back during that amazing E3 speech that Todd Howard gave, he seemed to imply that private worlds would be something that all players would have access to. And to be fair, that was probably the plan, but due to the poor reception of Fallout 76, they had to pivot and paywall it because they needed some guaranteed form of revenue to make sure their time wasn't wasted. Does that make it right? No, but it at least provides some slight reasoning as to why they did it. And so, among all this chaos and negativity, Bethesda really needed to pull a magic rabbit out of their hat to save Fallout 76 and possibly the entire Fallout franchise. So within this moment of desperation, we got the Fallout expansion known as Wastelanders. The Wastelanders expansion was released on April 14th, 2020 and brought NPCs into Appalachia. This update was Bethesda's response to the lack of NPCs at launch and was amazing. From an in-game perspective, people were returning to Appalachia because of the promise of treasure in the new life. As a Fallout fan, this update was the perfect thing to get me back into the game and completely changed my view of Fallout 76. The Raiders and Settlers story was interesting and finally filled the gaps of what felt like an empty and lonely wasteland. Heck, if you missed NPCs so much, you could just have an ally NPC with you that will live in your home. But while I would love to give more credit to this update, there was another massive change that happened in July 2020 that saved Fallout 76. This change was that Fallout 76 was coming to Xbox Game Pass. Now, people who had sworn to never pay a penny to play that garbage game called Fallout 76 could justify downloading the game because it was already part of the service that they paid for. Also, I cannot overstate how much the Wastelanders update had done to restore this game's reputation. I had friends who knew I was a Fallout fan asking me if the new update was really worth it. Of course, I responded with yes, but only because Bethesda had created something worth playing. After the Wastelanders update, the next major update was called One Wasteland for All. If you ever needed a sign that Fallout 76 was achieving somewhat of a resurgence, look no further than this update. The One Wasteland update had one goal: to keep their hardcore fans happy. You see, when Fallout 76 players started to achieve high levels, like level 200 and 300, the game began to feel way too easy and players were losing the feel of intensity and danger within the game. So Bethesda created a system where players will see the same enemy, but the amount of damage they do scales. Now, when I was playing Fallout, this update absolutely ruined my game. I was around level 60 or 70, and this update made it nearly impossible for me to kill anyone and was extremely frustrating, but also hilarious. I will never forget walking out of my camp to see a Mirelurk and trying to fight it. But instead of killing it and moving on with my life, it turned into like a 10-minute long battle of me using everything in my inventory to kill it. In the moment, I opened Twitter and even Reddit hoping to find people like me infuriated about the update. But instead, I found people happy with the update. They were glad that the game had become a little bit more challenging. And this update was also very important because Bethesda was getting ready to drop another massive expansion with the name Steel Dawn. The Steel Dawn update was extremely important as it brought one of Fallout's favorite factions into Appalachia, the Brotherhood of Steel. The Brotherhood has been a fan favorite within the Fallout universe, and their inclusion definitely brought some players back. From my personal experience, I enjoyed the questline and found it to be another success. Now, different people have different opinions. I have seen some negative feedback about how the quest is mainly just two people arguing and bickering the whole time, which is true. The head of this Brotherhood chapter, Paladin Romani, is constantly arguing with Knight Shin about the proper approach that the Brotherhood should take with Appalachia. The Brotherhood of Steel have shown in past games that they aren't afraid to take what isn't theirs, and displays of force aren't out of their comfort zone. The main conflict in this expansion is between Romani's belief that the Brotherhood should be more kind and open with the people of Appalachia, while Knight Shin believes that they shouldn't be straying from the traditional methods that they were taught. As a player, this dialogue can get a bit old, but hey, anything at this point is better than no NPCs. We already went through that. So Steel Dawn was a success at bringing back players and also giving new players a reason to start playing. The next large update for the Brotherhood came in early July of 2021 named Steel Rain. Steel Rain continued from where Dawn left off, but it was much shorter. Where Steel Dawn felt like a full expansion, Steel Rain felt like a tacked on DLC. The conflict between Paladin Romani and Knight Shin continues, but they both settle their differences to deal with the rising threat of the super mutants. This DLC's big bad boss is Dr. Blackburn, a scientist who believes that becoming mutants is what's next for humanity. Like all mad scientists, something with their experiment goes horribly wrong, and it's up to the player to clean things up. After that, Romani and Shin have finally had enough, and the player gets to choose who leaves the Brotherhood and who stays in the Brotherhood. Now, I have to give massive props to Bethesda for how they executed on this. While everyone playing this knew that the two would eventually split and go their separate ways, the story and decision that leads up to it is just as satisfying for the player. So, with all of these interesting expansions, all I can think about is how much better Fallout 76 would have been at launch if Bethesda had just included Wastelanders in the base game or even Steel Dawn. Everyone's perception of Fallout 76 would have been wildly different. Instead of a massive flop, Bethesda could have had another exciting success. But sadly, we've arrived in the year 2022, which was the beginning of a bad trend for Fallout 76. In mid-2021, expeditions for Fallout 76 were announced. These expeditions offered opportunities for players to travel to new areas within the Fallout world. The first expedition offered was the Pit, which was supposed to be modern-day Pittsburgh. My personal theory is that Bethesda was content with the story and world that they had given players in Appalachia, so they viewed expeditions as an opportunity to expand the Fallout world without creating a new game. On paper, this isn't a bad idea as it allows players to explore new areas and they get to create new characters and storylines. But in an unfortunate situation, around the time that the expedition was going to be released, some anonymous Bethesda employees revealed that the working conditions in the company had become unbearable. Employees were forced to work overtime hours with no compensation because of the deadlines that had been set. This caused many employees to leave, and Bethesda was forced to move around a ton of employees from studio to studio to keep up with all the projects. In the article, some of Arcane Studios' developers had to move to Fallout 76. This inner corporate chaos and movement may have been the reason why Redfall was a failure at launch, and also the reason why the pit was a failure as well. For my personal playthrough, I got the idea that more was intended and there was a lot of untapped potential left behind. It took me around 3 hours to beat it, and the experience was extremely underwhelming. The expeditions in my eyes could have been a Wastelanders type update that could have completely changed how we played Fallout 76, but instead it delivered an experience that wasn't nearly as fun as prior updates. So when an Atlantic City expedition was announced, my expectations were set a bit lower. I watched the trailer knowing that it was going to be another small-scale update that I would beat in the blink of an eye. However, Bethesda seems to have seen this reception coming. Before the DLC was released, Bethesda revealed that the Atlantic City update would be split in two. The first half would be played like the Pit Expedition, and the second would be a much larger free-roaming update that gave Fallout 76 fans what they had wanted in the first place. Now, as of me writing the script, it is March 8th. The first part of the Atlantic City update was released, and oh boy, was it awful. The areas you explore were boring, and the new overgrown enemy was just a feral ghoul and super mutant reskin. The story and dialogue is completely forgettable, and the only thing that I remember doing in-game is gambling all of my caps in the casino. The amazing race portion of Atlantic City was also extremely boring and included inconveniences that only seemed to add more runtime to your playthrough. They even make you go through the trouble of killing one of the twins, your main opponent, but then they just respawn and appear at the end. Instead of adding some new boss or obstacle, you just face the same person twice. Either way, this expedition update was awful, and I lost brain cells in the process. And I think Bethesda knew this update wasn't going to go well, which is why they decided to split it up. They released the expedition as a way to introduce some characters and give players something to do. Meanwhile, they put some more time and resources into the second half of the update that will have massive implications for the future of Fallout 76. In the end, the story of Fallout 76 is one of recovery and resurgence. The Fallout 76 we have now is so different from the one released back in 2018. And because of that, I have to give massive credit to Bethesda and the developers who worked to fix it. While I still think the pit stinks and the first Atlantic City DLC is awful, I have to give massive credit for the changes in the Wastelanders and Brotherhood of Steel expansions. You not only restored my faith in Fallout 76, but you gave me hope for a future Fallout title in which Bethesda uses the lessons they learned from their time in Appalachia to wherever they go next. If you enjoyed this video, don't subscribe. I mainly make 5 Nights at Freddy's content, and this is just a one-time video about a franchise I love. But if you at least enjoyed the video or Fallout, press the like button and comment your favorite Fallout memory. Besides that, see you later, Vault Dweller.